We always let that song play to the end. There's Pink on Magic, Never Gonna Not Dance Again. 24 minutes from now, it'll be 9 o'clock. Mike Barrett in the studio, as we mentioned. And Ethan in with us again this morning. Fellas, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, it's an Ethan Dad Day, or a Dad Ethan Day. Which way does it go? It's Ethan Dad.
I just call it dang quality time. That's what it is, because we're getting close to summer vacations wrapping up.
Yeah, it's wrapping up, and much to Ethan's chagrin, last week, Mom and Dad were off in Seattle for a business trip with Safeco Insurance. Went to their main facilities out there in Seattle and got to do some learning and get some entertainment, and he wasn't invited because it was a business trip. So we're trying to make it up to him, right, buddy? Yeah.
You can't hear Ethan. He's off mic. He's over there with his nose in his iPad or something.
Oh, yeah.
So this actually worked out pretty good because we just talked about summer vacations wrapping up. Now, there's some significant life events like going back to school.
Yeah.
Other significant life events, not just for the youngsters out there who are transitioning from not driving
to driving. I think it's more Mom and Dad transitioning to acceptance of them not driving to driving.
That was the next step, because now we got to put them on our insurance, and we haven't talked about this. And some of those kids may be headed off to college, another life event. So let's talk about this in the insurance industry.
Absolutely. So, we're really at the time. Summertime tends to be a hotter time than others because who wants to take their driver's test in the wintertime, right? But it really is a time we're starting to see more kids getting their permits and getting licensed. And the beautiful part about getting a permit is not going to impact your parents' insurance. So once you're a permitted operator and you're allowed to start driving with a person with you, mom and dad or somebody of age that meets the guidelines, you don't need to be listed on the policy yet as a rated driver. So you're not going to adversely impact mom and dad's pocketbook just yet.
The wallet is going,
Yeah, it has one more year to save. And then after that, once they're on, they're on. And once you have a licensed operator in your household, if you have an auto insurance policy, they have to be listed. I've had so many people over the years that told me different things that just simply aren't true. And you're almost playing with fire by believing things that aren't necessarily true. But one that I get a lot is, hey, we don't need to add our child to our auto policy unless they get into an accident or get a motor vehicle infraction. So we're good. So we won't add them. And that's not really the case. And in fact, that's not the case at all. By contractual obligation, you are required to list all licensed operators in the house that drive vehicles. So whether they have their own insurance, have their own vehicle or not, you can list them the appropriate way, but they need to be listed. Which, what it is people are trying to save money. Who doesn't want to save money? We all do. But do it the right way. Make sure you're listing your young drivers in your policy, because here's the catch that you're in if something happens. Let's say they get into an accident, and I will preface this with I've not seen this happen, but here's the scenario. And do you want to be the first one to see it happen to you? Is that you have your kid, you don't list them on the policy, they get in an accident, and the insurance company goes, well, for the time that this child was licensed to now would have cost X amount of dollars, so that's coming out of your claim assessment. So there are ways to get in trouble with that. And it's not something I would want to test the waters on.
Well, I think, too, and being a parent myself, and obviously my son's been driving for years.
Yeah. So is Ethan, and he's only 9.
Yeah, but that's the mower.
Oh, well, he's good at it.
Is the coverage that young driver has. You talk about parents and the importance of saving a buck, okay?
Yeah, we're all there.
Don't go with just liability insurance coverage with a young driver.
Yeah.
I think that would be cardinal sin number one. Am I wrong with that assumption?
Well, so liability only is fine if they have a vehicle that warrants liability only. If you have a vehicle with any substantial amount of value, you want to weigh the balances or weigh the potential benefits of whether having physical damage coverage such as comprehensive and collision would make sense or not. But example is me. My dad was in the insurance industry just long enough for me when I turned 16 to say, "You're on your own, kid. You're not on my policy. You can be listed as a in-household member, but you're getting your own insurance." I had a liability-only policy because my car wasn't worth much. It was worth $1,500. So at that point, it made sense for me to have liability only. I'm protecting my personal assets. I'm protecting myself from financial harm if I become liable for somebody's property damage or injury. So, it's important to have appropriate coverage, but you don't necessarily have to have full coverage because, that same car that was $1,500 probably was costing me $1,400 to $1,500 a year for liability only. Probably could have been $3,500 a year for full coverage. And for that amount of money, I'd rather put money in the bank and just pay out of pocket and buy another $1,500 junker.
Okay, so then let's lead this into limits of protection.
Yeah.
We have talked about this in almost every other aspect of automobile insurance. So you've got a young driver, okay? And if that young driver is driving back and forth to school, those are the earlier hours.
Yeah.
Those earlier hours have more commuters.
Yeah.
Most of those commuters have newer vehicles.
Yeah.
Newer vehicles
Cost a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go with the bare minimum as far as coverage, right?
You're exactly right on that. I mean, the worst thing you can do is save $20 a year or save $5 or $10 a month to go to state minimum liability when you could have 10 times that. So do your due diligence and see what the different liability options are. A lot of people go into the game and say, well, I just want the minimum, whatever the state requires. And when they say that, I say, well, that's not what we don't even at our office offer that. And here's why. It's an educational moment. While you're complying with the state, you're not protecting yourself. And again, I always tell people, don't get insurance because somebody tells you have to. You get it to protect yourself. So it's important about having appropriate liability. For moms and dads who have vehicles and kids are getting added, if they don't have an umbrella policy, it's probably a darn good time to think about it because you can get an extra $1 million, $2 million, $3 million or more in liability protection to help protect you if the young child driving one of your vehicles insured by you gets in a horrific accident and hurts people that could really come back to bite you.
Well, now that just tied in. You were in my head this morning, okay? So we talk about the average cost of a new vehicle is between $30,000 and $50,000. That's the average.
Yeah, that's base.
In today's market,
Yeah.
okay? So it is very seldom that a motor vehicle accident happens with zero injury.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, you may have a bump and a bruise,
yeah.
but if you cause it, your insurance has to cover that.
Yeah.
So that's, I think that's where I was going to with the tie-in of, don't go with that minimum dollar amount.
No,
because it just costs so much for a car out there. If you've got $20,000 total coverage, you haven't even covered the cost of the vehicle. Say nothing about any physical harm.
Right. State of Vermont minimum is 25, 50, 10. That's 25,000 bodily injury per person, 50,000 total accident for bodily injury, and 10,000 property damage. That's not going far. And just because your insurance limits have been met doesn't mean you're not liable anymore. It means the insurance company has met their requirement of the contract to protect you, and you are still liable. They just don't have any more money for you. It's now on to you personally. So it can be a scary thing to think of it that way because many people just assume insurance isn't a front line. It's the end line, right? No, insurance is just your choosing something to protect you. And once that protection is gone, you could still be held liable.
So unless you win that $1.5 something billion lottery jackpot, get your insurance up to date. Tell them how they can do that.
Very simple. Give us a call, 748-5224. You can find us right on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury, online, thebarrettagency.com, Google, Facebook, and YouTube. Just look for Barrett Insurance Agency. And you brought up this morning before we went on the air, maybe we should start talking about the kids in the back of the school. So let's consider this one part one, licensed operators. Now we'll talk about the part that going back to school next week. And all the kids are going to hate me because I'm bringing up the back to school, which is the three words nobody wants to hear right now. But I will be talking about it. Don't hit me. My son just hit me.
Here's the other three. It means the same thing. End of
summer, fun.
Summer or vacation. Yeah. Ethan wants a word here.
Do you want to say something? Is that why you're up? Or were you just here to hit me? What? Hurry up.
I don't like school.
You hear that, Principal Miller? You got some work to do.
You're in the doghouse.
Yeah.
Music from Lady Gaga now on Magic